For all the talk about the Fingerpoke of Doom, and there's a lot of talk about that, there are a lot of other episodes of WCW Nitro that would go on to kill the company. And for that discussion, there is no better place to start than episode 179 of WCW Nitro at the Florida State
Fairgrounds.
This is an infamous episode for so many reasons, but we'll just mention a few. First off, Ric Flair's wild ride, which we'll get to in a moment. Bret Hart wrestling a sketch comedy actor. The lost Hogan versus Piper match, which I'm sure you did not remember at all happened on the show. And of course, Jerry Flynn winning a match.
It's going to be Jerry Flynn's biggest win of his career here on WCW Monday Nitro.
But the legacy of this episode of Nitro is none of those because, well, you either don't remember them or they're so bad they just live on in this weird haze of foggy, terrible Nitro-ness that we all sort of recall. This episode of Nitro, though, was really the episode where the casuals stopped switching back and forth between WCW and what was happening at Raw. They just went to Raw and they kind of stayed there.
Yeah, and you can tell from the numbers that we got, weeks or so later, the TV ratings, and Raw did a record rating this week. They would continue to do record ratings in the weeks following, but this was their first record. They did almost a 6.0. They did a 6.0 for that first hour, then a little bit lower than that. And Nitro did just about half that, with the audience continuously going away as the show went on. The only segment that had really any value or really that people wanted to watch was Hogan versus Piper. For some odd reason, that was the highest rated segment on this show, and I'm not entirely sure why. But pretty much after that, everyone tuned out, and by the end, there were maybe 3 million people watching Nitro.
Ooh, that's rough.
They went from about 5.9 million to 3 in less than 2 hours.
Even before this, even with the Fingerpoke of Doom and the episodes that came after that, and we're not that far away removed from the Fingerpoke of Doom, but people were still trying to give Nitro a chance. And this just became an episode with nothing redeeming about it whatsoever. And the thing about WCW Nitro, and I love Nitro, Tim, and I know you're a big fan of Nitro as well, but it was at its best when there was a sense of realism, a sense of chaos, right? That anything can happen on Nitro. That's kind of what made it a big deal for 83 weeks, as they are fond of saying. And then it was also great because sprinkled in with that chaos and that unpredictability and that realism was some exciting wrestling, some fast-paced action. And Nitro was at its best when it had all of those elements. And episode 197 had 0 of them.
Yeah, nothing good really at all. The matches weren't that great. You have a tag tournament match that basically took up about a half hour of the show, and it had the same 2 guys in both matches, and it's just weird. Also, both of the matches, they just seemed like they were pushed out there with absolutely no knowledge whatsoever of who's supposed to win. They were calling it in the ring. The referee was telling them, hey, you got 10 minutes, keep going. They keep going. It's just a sloppy mess. We're going to get more into that tag tournament, though, later, because that's just a whole other video that we want to cover, and we don't want to get distracted with that.
And worse than the sort of boring, sloppy wrestling, this episode just has a complete lack of continuity. This is an episode of television bereft of anyone doing anything remotely resembling quality control.
They really needed a continuity editor, and they needed a few of them, not just for Nash and Hogan, but they needed one for Flair and maybe one for David Flair too. I don't know. They needed a few of them though on the show.
Let's just jump into this episode of WCW Nitro because the big thing is Ric Flair being set up, that is, by his Jerry Seinfeld-esque manservant Eric Bischoff, which is a whole thing.
Because he's my butler.
Bischoff sets up Flair, who's then attacked by the New World Order in a field before some random dude just happens to be driving in a field and finds it's just
it's
as
so
stupid
funny.
As stupid as that all sounds, that is this episode. It is just this episode of Nitro is Ric Flair's wild ride. Let's get into it. But the one thing I want to talk about, probably first and foremost, they spent so much money on doing this. They're renting helicopters and multiple Hummers and a limousine, and they're hiring actors and lighting for all of the talk about the merger between AOL and Time Warner and how WCW had to cut its budget and how there wasn't any money to do things. There was a hell of a lot of money sloshing around the WCW budget to do. This is a production. This is a high level production. I don't even know like an estimate on how much this would cost, but this is one of the more expensive things I can recall WCW doing around this time.
This is probably one of the more expensive things in wrestling. I don't think WWE used to do multi-camera shoots, but like not only is this a multi-camera shoot, this is multi-helicopter, multi-Hummers, multi-limos. You need some guy in a truck who can get a crappy truck you can drive and pick up Ric Flair. Plus you need all the terrible. There was a 3-camera shoot in the limo. Let me remind this, a 3-camera shoot in a limousine. You do not need that many cameras in a freaking limousine. So I don't know why they had that many.
A lot of weird, unnecessary close-ups. And so here's the thing, right? They spend all of this money on all of these cameras and helicopters and whatnot. And I swear to God, I don't think anyone had a script, like not even a treatment. Maybe someone had a storyboard, but there were so many basic errors, so much just rambling. I mean, let's be real. You and me, Tim, like we can ramble for quite a bit, but this is just like nonsensical. It's like, let's have a one shot of Ric Flair having a conversation with what was it? Like Dillinger at the arena talking about how Arn attacked someone. And it's an uncomfortably long shot about something we already know that happened.
Yes, and then the funny thing is you have like the other, I don't even know who they are the corporate dudes in the limo with him, and they're all like, oh, I guess this isn't good that he's running the company. I'm like, you gave the company to a wrestler. What did you, and you know Ric Flair is going to be crazy. So like, do you think the show is just going to be normal now? No, like it's going to be absolutely insane. And it's just, yeah, it's, they wasted what, a half hour on this? Just all of the segments combined is probably a good half hour.
Forget about the limo stuff, right? That stuff's ridiculous. But there's one thing I have to talk about that just shows the lack of continuity, the lack of direction, the lack of all of that stuff. So they're in the limo, the NWO, who for whatever reason are wearing balaclavas, who are like hiding their identity, even though like we all know who they are, and they're using an NWO weight belt during the attack.
And also you can see Hulk Hogan's Fu Manchu coming out of the ski mask. So, you know, there's nobody else in wrestling who has a Fu Manchu like that.
You 3 out of the car, this ain't about you.
So we get to that, the guy randomly picks him up, and then for whatever reason, there's a shot at a gas station, and it's like coming back from a commercial break, and we get this shot at a gas station, and hood's open, but he's at the gas pump island, and I swear to God, this dude is just watering his engine and carburetor like it was a garden. No one gave him direction as to what he should be doing, but they had to set up a hose to bring out to the island. So instead of just having him get gas, like, okay, he needs to get gas, or having him look under the hood, maybe there's something wrong with the car, that it's in Pearl, he is just looking like a grade A moron watering the daisies underneath the hood of his car. And then, speaking of just dumbness, Ric Flair like falls out and he's like, oh, like fairgrounds, like some zombie. And this is where direction would have helped. Like, someone should have said, if you don't have a script, someone should have been like, all right, like, here's what we're doing here. Like, this is your motivation or whatever. You're doing something with the car, but the actor or whoever this was at the gas station didn't have direction. Flair's just, I don't even know what Flair's doing at this point. And it just boggles the mind that they had to spend money on this. Again, multiple cameras, lighting. I don't know about the location. I feel like one of the wrestlers probably knew about the location or something, but you set up the hose to bring it to the gas pump island, and then they drive away, and it's just that lack of continuity. But as bad as that is, I guess at least they didn't spoil it for everyone like someone else later on in the episode would.
So along with this getting ruined later in the show, it probably should have gotten ruined earlier because none of the commentators know what's going on. No, four of them have no idea what's going on. Neither do the 2,500 people in attendance at the Florida State Fairgrounds. They have no idea. There's no screen to show them that Hulk Hogan and the gang have beaten up Ric Flair and, for a good 20 minutes. They have no idea, nor do they have any idea that he's in a field somewhere, God knows how far away from the arena. Nobody has any idea. So when the end of the show happens, it's even sadder and weirder because they have no idea what's going on.
But before we get to the end of the show, the NWO beats him up. They come back to the arena. Hogan's like calling out Flair, and nobody has no idea what's happening. But someone does come out, and I wasn't expecting it. But yeah, it was quite the big name. We talked about it earlier, but it was...
That's not Ric Flair. That's the United States Heavyweight Champion.
Rowdy Roddy Piper. So Piper Hogan, still a big deal even at this stage of the game. Piper comes out and he ruins everything, right? Because at this point, the crowd doesn't know what's happening, but the TV audience does. And at some point, Piper's going back and forth with Hogan, and he's like,
I saw what you did with Flair.
Which, of course, he's not supposed to see that because no one in the arena knows what's happening. And they try to gloss over it, but then, like, moments later, he's like,
Flair's busy.
Well, which one is it? Did you see what happened? And if you did see what happened, like, that should kind of take precedent of this discussion. Or is he busy and you don't know what happened? And again, just continuity, people not having lines, people not knowing lines. And the promo is fine, whatever, just classic Piper at this point in time. He's trying, and then they have a match, and it's just, it did well rating wise, but this match is just, it's there, it exists. I don't really have a lot to say. And then of course the NWO interferes and it renders everything moot anyway.
Yeah, this match is a punch fest. I don't think anybody takes a bump. I think literally it's just punching, eye rakes, eye pokes, and then maybe he takes out his weight belt. But yeah, nobody takes a bump here in this match. A very, very easy match for these two men. And I'm sure they've wrestled about 10,000 times before this, so it didn't even matter. But yes, just a completely useless match, unadvertised, and nobody cared anyway because it wasn't any good.
The thing about Nitro and Raw at this point in time, and I mean really throughout the Monday Night Wars, is that it wasn't just the main storyline, right? It was also about the undercard. The undercard was, in many cases, as interesting, if not more interesting than what was happening. And these were the segments where you'd switch back and forth and what would garner your attention. There were always segments on Nitro that could at least stop you from switching back. Usually, anytime anyone clicked over on the February 15th issue of Nitro, they probably went scurrying back to Raw because this was just, there was nothing interesting unless you were like a huge fan of Mad TV.
Yes, that is when you saw Bret Hart come out and you're like, oh, cool. Who's Bret Hart facing? And then you see Will Sasso come out. This is Will Sasso when he's maybe 24 years old and he weighs maybe 400 pounds and he has 0% wrestling experience. I saw an interview with him recently saying he just got in the ring that afternoon. So this is literally Bret Hart having a match with himself. And it's a pretty damn good match. So it shows that Bret Hart can have a match with literally a paper bag and it would be good.
Yeah, and to Sasso's credit, like he's getting tossed around. He's not, I mean, he's bumping more than Piper and Hogan combined, yeah. Which is saying something. But yeah, it's not like Mad TV was a huge part of the zeitgeist around this time.
Look what I can do.
A fine show. Will Sasso, I think, does an incredible job. And Will Sasso is someone who really loves wrestling. And I have respect for Will Sasso. This wasn't it. And this wasn't getting people to stay tuned in. And then, I mean, we should mention the Deborah Wilson, his co-star's heel turn on him, which, again, not the time or the place for this. No one was really doing that. But this was like the second thing. It was Ric Flair's Wild Ride. And then the second biggest thing on this Nitro was Bret Hart fights Will Sasso. And then there's a clip. It's like Ric Flair storyline, Piper Hogan, Flair Sasso, and then like, oh, Tim, like we're in the doldrums now, buddy.
And I'm just going to blow through this because there is a 6-man tag cruiserweight match on this show that goes through
A
not
17-minute. Oh.
And not just one commercial break. There are 2 commercial breaks, which means that this may have went close to 30 minutes if you watch this live. I'm pretty sure it went close to 30 because if you're just going to say 3-minute commercial breaks, it's about 23, 24 minutes. But dear Lord, did none of these men figure out what the hell they were doing until they got out to this ring? I mean, you have Juventud Guerrera, who is a good wrestler. He's very good, but Juvi does Juvi things sometimes, and the match gets messed up. But, I mean, he was actually pretty good in this match, probably the best one. You have Dandy, you have Super Kilo, guys who are just okay. Then you have Blitzkrieg, who we only saw the week before. He's been on WCW Saturday Night, I believe, as a jobber, or maybe a Thunder. But this is like maybe his 3rd or 4th actual Nitro or WCW television match. And, I mean, he's pretty good here, but oh my goodness, does he just mess up things? And I mean, they're talking a lot. You have luchadors talking to him, and you can clearly tell that they're talking to each other because he doesn't know what he's doing. And yeah, this match goes on way too long, so many botches. And I mean, they have already kind of ruined the cruiserweight division by this point. It gets fully ruined by the end of the year, but at this point, you have, you know, Rey Mysterio about to lose his mask.
Now, Ray, hand the mask over. We can call this match off.
And then he's fighting giants for some reason. And then he's, you know, gone. I don't know. And then also
they're building him up to feed to Kevin Nash.
Yes. They are doing that basically. It doesn't happen till the next pay-per-view, but yeah, I mean, they always talk about how Nash, I lost to Rey Mysterio one time. I'm like, yes, one time you lost to him, and it was in a very fluky way, and then Mysterio continues to win fluky matches against giants the rest of the month, and nobody cares. It's so bad. There's also, you know, the tag title tournament. That takes up a lot of the show as well. I don't even want to talk about those because they're not good, and we're going to do a whole other video about those anyway, and nobody cares about them anyway, who's actually there. Then we have these segments that are just, you know, now we understand what's going on, but if you're watching it at the time, you have no idea who is supposed to be hanging out with Tori Wilson in a hotel room. But, I mean, if it's you hanging out with Tori Wilson in a hotel room, then you're having a pretty good night, I'd say. But, you know, you have no idea what's going on. She's just kind of in the room with you. This eventually leads to something, but weeks later it leads to something. So you're just having no idea what's going on. And then there's a Steiner segment.
And before we get to the Steiner statement, what I don't like here is that it's like a POV thing. So it's like, is this supposed to be me, the viewer? Yeah. And I mean, I could get into a whole thing because there's a television show out there that did this entire thing, and I hate it. And I'm not going to get into it, but it's just like, is this us, the viewer? Is this someone else? It's never made clear. And if you're like flipping over and you're like, oh, okay, Tori Wilson, beautiful woman, but then like, I mean, I'm in a hotel room like with a Pizza Hut box as well, like, oh, and then yeah. But hey, this was somehow not the most confusing talking head segment on the show.
No, because we had lawyers, tons of lawyers. Not only do we have lawyers with Flair, we have lawyers.
Scott Steiner has filed civil suit in Superior Court in Buffalo, New York for monetary damages.
Do I know what was being said here? No, I have absolutely no idea. I actually tried to put my closed captioning up on my computer and on my television. Neither one of them could pick up what the hell was going on here.
Diamond Dallas Page to appear before a grand jury where it is believed he will be indicted on felony charges.
I don't know what's going on, so we're just going to go right past it because I don't even think it even means anything like later on. Like, we're talking about the Tori Wilson thing because this actually leads to something weeks later. This Steiner lawyer thing doesn't really lead to much because he's being sued by Kimberly because he pushes Kimberly out of a damn moving vehicle. So yes, he should be getting sued for that. It's very stupid. The whole thing leads to nothing except for Steiner versus DDP on a pay-per-view, and that's about it.
There's so much we would really like to get into, and we're not going to get into it because it's just it's trying to unpack things that aren't worth unpacking.
And while you're at it, I'm kind of hungry. Will you order me that special salad that you got me the other night, you know?
The Monday Night War is obviously a head-to-head, and the thing about the Raw on this night is that it wasn't a particularly good or memorable Raw outside of the main event. There were ample opportunities for WCW to get the audience's attention, and they could not even be bothered. It was just the lack of quality control, the lack of continuity, It just drove people away, and they stayed over at this Raw, which was just, it wasn't particularly interesting until you got to the main event. That was something else.
So on Raw, you have Mankind versus The Rock in a ladder match for the title. I know on WCW you had a title match as well, but nobody cares about that match. No, you want to watch a ladder match between Rock and Mankind. And yeah, it's a good match. You have Austin out there as well on commentary. You have all your big stars out there. But what does WCW have on their main event? They do have a lot of big stars, I'll tell you that much, but do we know what's going on?
Nobody knows what's going on. Sure as hell not the live crowd, because it's just Flair stumbling, bumbling, fumbling his way to the ring with an axe handle, just looking like a grade A schmeck.
He looks like a zombie. You're right. He looks like a zombie still.
Yeah.
He's still a zombie walking to the ring with an axe handle
like
for some reason.
Brains. Like it's like watching like The Walking Dead, right? He's just coming and coming and coming, but there's no real purpose or life behind his eyes, and then he just gets beaten down by the NWO.
And what's worse too is like you have Tony Schiavone on commentary, and he's using his like very mellow voice because he's scared. Because like I mean, he doesn't know what's going on. You have a man who's literally like, this is like a man coming out of the hospital after a surgery, and then he just gets beaten up and he's still fighting. And it's like, this is sad. Like, this is a sad thing to watch. An old man who's almost 50. Flair's almost 50 here. And he's coming to the ring disheveled, just getting just demolished. And it's like, this isn't enjoyable at all. I don't know who would enjoy this.
So we, the TV viewer, obviously know what happened. We saw what's going on. And the only thing we're probably thinking is like, well, why don't you go to why are you going to pick this fight right here? Yeah. They tried to tell two different stories to two different audiences, and they failed twice. Like,
yes.
That's remarkable.
I've never WCW was trying to do a whole thing here where it was really trying to get Hogan and Nash over. Nash doesn't need any help getting himself over. Neither does Hogan, really. But I mean, essentially what happens after this point is that Hogan and Nash just become the entire show, and Flair is just kind of there being Ric Flair. But I mean, at this point, it's supposed to be NWO against Ric Flair, using David Flair as sort of a middleman into getting more into Ric Flair's head. But Ric Flair doesn't really care too much, but he kind of cares, but not enough. It's madness, really. It's really just madness. So if you happen to stay around for the 10 minutes of Ric Flair getting his ass beat, looking like a drunk, looking like a zombie, then you might have missed the maybe 5 seconds at the end of where Hall hands you, POV person, a taser and says, "Don't mess this up." It will make sense, but not until later, and not until you actually watch the pay-per-view. You have to watch the pay-per-view, because the next Nitro, they don't really explain it either, that David Flair is the one who's supposed to be this POV guy, and you get the taser, and then you taser.
Spoiler alert! What are you doing?
I spoiled Super Brawl for you. Don't worry, I didn't spoil too much. The match isn't great. So I mean, basically, you know, the POV shots do make sense, but if you do not see the pay-per-view, if you do not see this Scott Hall thing at the end, you will have no idea what's going on at the pay-per-view or what's going on next week when they explain it.
And I just want to compare that shot of like Scott Hall handing a POV person a taser. By the way, like, he's like, do you know now you know how to do it? Like, all you did is like turn it on, wait for it to make like the bug zapper noise, and then you like harmlessly poke someone with it. Yeah, like it's a terrible look. But that aside, the ending over on Raw was Stone Cold Steve Austin getting off comms and giving a stunner to The Rock to set up that whole deal, and it's just night and day.
WrestleMania! Rock, Stone Cold at WrestleMania!
Now you see how it's done? Don't mess it up.
What are you turning into? Are you turning into like the choose your own adventure mystery where Scott Hall's giving you a taser to use on someone? Or are you going to go see Rock and Austin? And that is really just, it bookends that point of WCW had lost the casual, the person switching back and forth, because if they're watching Raw, they're going to keep watching Raw the next week. And obviously the ratings do improve, and it's not like the death knell of Nitro, but this was really that Nitro, that part in the Monday Night War where you could get a sense WCW was losing the casual.
Yeah, I mean, just based on the viewership, like I read before, where you have 5 million people at Roddy Piper versus Hogan, and then maybe 45 minutes later, 2 million of those people kind of walked away from this show to watch Raw. So, you know, you're not holding the audience at all. None of these matches are holding the audience at all. None of the things that you saw in the ring were holding anybody. So usually Nitro used to be known for having good matches. Even if they were matches with Jerry Flynn against Fit Finley, it'd still be a good match, and it'd go about 6 minutes. You'd watch it.
Let's not go crazy.
Okay. Well, you'd watch it, you'd be like, okay, fine, you move on. Raw was the show that was known for having 2-minute matches that ended very quickly. They'd move on, show you Sable in a bikini. There's another match. You know, they kind of, it was bing, 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 boom. Here, you had 10 minutes of Ric Flair in a limousine with a bunch of guys in suits talking about nonsense that means nothing. So, you know, this is really where we want to start here on the Nitro completely losing their way. They were trying to do something new with the out of the ring segments and all of these POV segments. They tried to make their mini movies, and these are not working. They needed a way better director, a way better writer as well, and a continuity editor.
They needed a writer, not even a better writer. They needed someone with a script to hand to everyone, or even a director, because I'm guessing Bischoff was probably directing these, and if he wasn't, then whatever intern was doing it should not have been allowed to do it. But you should not have a guy watering his engine at a gas station. Like, come on, people.
You had that. I mean, this was literally like, you know, Nash and Hogan probably wrote this out a couple of days before. They were like, hey, let's do this. Let's film this $60 million production that'll be on the show for 20 minutes. And they were like, okay. And then Bischoff did it. I don't even think Bischoff was at this show. I think he did the limo segments, but I don't think he was at this show, because he would be on vacation through most of February, which is another reason why Nitro completely falls off the rails, because there's no Daddy Eric there to help them out. But I mean, you know, this was one of the first ones where Nitro really had absolutely no idea what they were doing. They had nobody helping them to put them back on that path, and then they just keep doing it for months on end, and, you know, just bleed their audience.
But at the very least, bless their hearts, they tried, because
they did.
A few weeks after this, they don't even try anymore. And the next time we hear special guest referee, we get into the Nitros that helped kill WCW. We're going ahead to March 8th. And the Nitro where it's kind of the Nitro where nothing happens.
Nope. They have an intro for an hour, and then you get a Nitro show. That's about it.
I hope you like Mystery Science Theater, but not nearly as good, because we've got that. But that is coming up next time here on Special Guest Referee. I'm Cheyenne from the Touchback. That's Tim from Wrong Sports. Make sure you check out his channel. And until next time, just remember,
don't spoil the story, Roddy.
I saw what you did with Flair.